to a live edition at St. Mary's College of Inspiring Teachers. I'm Danny Hogger.
I'm Davis Beam.
And we are here, the hosts of Inspiring Teachers, broadcasting live. So proud to be recording at St. Mary's College for the annual Action Research Conference. This is the 15th year of this exceptional education event. We are here to celebrate teachers, the research within teaching, featuring interviews with research presenters in hours 2 and 3, and we already have our first guest here, which is amazing. We'll be sharing stories that we have learned all year long from the first 25 guests of our show, which will be great, and that's available on Amazon as well. Our podcast is available weekly on iTunes and YouTube, on Twitter at Show Teachers, and on Instagram at Inspiring Teachers Show.
We're really happy to be here at St. Mary's, and this is a great summit where people get to get together and present what they've been working on for the last year for their master's or PhD. And this summit has been going on for about 15 years now, and it's really kind of the crux of some of the best research that happens here in the Bay Area.
And we're kind of riding the coattails of that.
Absolutely.
We're just here to celebrate these people who are here culminating their research and the investment that they put in. And joining us in hour 1 is Joe Heffernan, high school teacher. Joe, thanks so much not only for coming to see us today, but being willing to jump on the microphone. That's really the aspect of an inspiring teacher, is that willingness to jump in. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
It's a pleasure. So Joe, you've been teaching high school for how many years?
So actually I'm an administrator right now. I've been teaching in high school. This is my 13th year in education.
And how has that transition been for you? Being in administration, how do you see yourself not only now inspiring teachers, but inspiring students as well and the staff?
It's a very different perspective when you start in the classroom and you're on the front lines of education working with students every day. You see the students and their work that they're producing. When you step out of that and you step into administration, you start looking at the teaching that goes on from the teacher perspective. You start seeing teaching and learning in a different way, making sure that our teachers are delivering quality instruction, and our teachers do that each and every day. We have great teachers, and in every school I've ever been part of, excellent teachers in the classroom presenting material to students, delivering quality instruction, and really focusing on student learning each and every day. It's really inspiring to me to see that going on from a larger school-wide perspective, and see that quality of instruction that goes on, and then to see the students walk into. When I first started in administration, it was in an elementary school, and I remember walking into a kindergarten class the first time and being terrified about that. But seeing the eyes of the students and seeing the eagerness of students to learn, it was really inspiring to me and helped me grow more as an educator to see it from the other side.
I think the word that I heard was growth. You must see such a progression, such an arc from the people you work with, the growth of teachers, the growth of students. That must be very rewarding to see that from the administrative side.
Absolutely. You see growth every day in the job, and the personal growth for me as well. My whole educational journey has been about personal growth, and I didn't see that myself when I started. It took other people to bring that out of me so I could see it for myself. And as I've gone through my journey, I see that growth in students, I've seen it in teachers and my colleagues.
So how were you inspired to go into education and become a teacher?
I had a long journey through education. One of the things that inspired me this morning, we talk about inspiration a lot, but inspired me was this idea of woodshop. You know, you're a woodshop teacher. Woodshop got me through high school. That's how I got there. Otherwise, I wouldn't have graduated high school. That's not hyperbole, that's the truth. I took 2 hours of high school my senior year, graduated well below the 50th percentile of my class, and had to do something different. I knew I had to make sure to graduate, to get onto that next step of my life. I wasn't college ready. What was I going to do to get there? Woodshop happened to be it for me, and that's what got me through high school.
What were the components of Woodshop that connected with you? What was it?
I don't know. You know, looking back on it now, I think it was the idea that there was a teacher who was interested in what I was doing that I could connect to, that helped me see something within myself that I wasn't able to see at the time. I was a terrible math student in high school, yet in woodshop you have to have a lot of mathematical skills. I didn't even really think about that idea that I had. It was someone else bringing it out of me that I didn't see at the time. It took me a long time to understand that that's what was happening, and several years after that, before I understood that was what was going on in the classroom. That's inspirational.
That sounds very similar to my story as well. School was not easy or not fun for me either, and I think that really lends you to bring a different perspective. Most teachers that I've met, they loved schools. They thrived in school. This was the environment they felt so good in, and so that's one reason why they go back. And I feel like I didn't. Yeah, school was not a fun time for me. So I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about how that transition or how that has made you feel as a teacher, that experience you had.
Well, it was a long time coming for me. That journey to education took a long time. Like I said, I wasn't in love with education when I started. When I left high school, 8 days after graduation, I was in boot camp. I did some things that were very challenging and very rewarding for me in the military career that I had. And that's where I started to discover that I could do these things, that other people were bringing it out of me. After I left the military, I went into business. I sat in a cubicle for a long time. And one of the things that I was doing later in my professional career was putting little small companies out of business, and that didn't sit right for me. And I felt this tug of education. And while I was in the military, I was going to college. I was starting this journey down education. And one day sitting in my cube, I thought, there's got to be something different for me. And I think I'm going to go back and be a high school English teacher.
Wow.
And that's what I did. And I wound up at St. Mary's as a traditional undergrad at 31. Went back. People who were late in their career can do this, and fell in love with education and went all the way up.
Yeah. I started at 30 as well.
Yeah, it's a very rewarding career, and that love of education took a long time to develop within me. And when I see students sitting in front of me struggling, I share my story with them. I'm not shy about sharing my story.
I love that.
And so they can see someone who has made it, who has gone through the same things that they're experiencing. It's not just someone talking to them who has been successful in education through the whole journey. It's someone who stumbled along the way, but yet was able to discover something about himself or herself to move forward.
That really resonates with a lot of kids. When I tell that story as well, or when I tell them that I've had difficulty reading my whole life, they're like, oh wow, so do I, and you can be successful. That's really powerful.
And there's a lot of your story that connects to our stories and the people that we've talked to. I think of the 42, 43 guests that we've had, about 50% didn't originally start straight out of their bachelor's going into teaching. A lot of people had experiences going elsewhere. And something else that you said clicked with me, I worked for the Los Angeles Angels baseball team for 5 years, and it was a great place to work. What a fun job. And I worked for the Stockton Ports. That was my first job. And baseball was such a great way to be able to watch a game and get paid a whopping $6.25 an hour at the Stockton Ports. Who would have thought? This is the greatest life. A free hot dog every game. This is the American dream, surely, for a 16-year-old from Stockton. What was interesting, though, was after 4 or 5 years of baseball, I started to think, every day I come in here, whether it's the radio and the traffic that I do at the traffic station or the baseball station, whether it's 3-1 A's today and 2-1 Angels the next day and 3-1 Angels the following day, it sure started to seem like a cycle. And I was starting to think about, well, what is the legacy that we're going to be leaving here in this world? Someone else can read these scores if I wasn't here, but who will remember that I contributed anything to the world, to the greater landscape? And what could I use my talents for in this communication ability to help inspire others? And teaching has been that. And I loved what you said about the vulnerability, right? You're okay with sharing something if you don't know it, or you're not comfortable, or you were in a spot where you weren't the greatest student maybe. I do that all the time. I think if I can elevate my students to be ahead of where I was when I was their age, then their trajectory will be greater than mine. And I always say that I want you to achieve more than what I did. I want you to go out and be amazing and follow goals, and I try to inspire them each day. And not in the sense of like, here's your inspiring thought, because they can see right through that, right? The transparency, they know what's honest and genuine. And that's just been one of the greatest things for me, is when somebody does come in at the end of a class, and they always wait, right? High schoolers, they wait till everyone else is left to talk to the teacher. And one of the kids said, Mr. Hogger, I was going to quit playing guitar, but you were talking about how you got made fun of in high school and you didn't quit. And now I'm playing the county fair next Thursday. This is me. And the student says, I'm not going to stop either. I'm like, I want to cry, I'm not going to, because I'm your tough teacher and I'm a man's man. But it's so cool when you have those moments where you change somebody's life. Isn't that amazing?
It is amazing, that idea of the legacy that you leave. What is it that we want to do? I was asked a few years ago about what I believed about teachers and their role in children's education. And what I thought about was this idea that once we're a teacher, we're that student's teacher for life. Mm-hmm. We never stop being that person's teacher. It's that daily role. It's that yearly role that we come through. It's the life after school that student leads. We're that person's teacher from the moment that person steps into the room for the rest of his or her life. And I think about that quite a bit, and I think about the connections that I've made with students over the years. Some of them I follow on Facebook, some of them follow me. One of my most rewarding experiences is, this is kind of a challenge for me, because one of the things I did with high school seniors was, toward the end of the school year, I had them write a letter to themselves, their 5-year letter, that I would then mail to them in 5 years. They'd all put a forever stamp on it, so I didn't have to put the postage. All the international students, I said, you know what, I'll take care of that. But what I did was, I had them write these letters to themselves, talking about where they wanted to be in 5 years and what their hopes and dreams were. And then in 5 years, I mailed those. Wow. So I just mailed my last set of 5-year letters out to my students. And it's that idea that I carry on, that these are my students. They're still my students. Yeah. Even though we may be colleagues now, and some of them are colleagues now, some of them are now teachers. But, and maybe in a way, I'm their student too. Because we know teachers learn from their students just as much as their students learn from them.
I think about what I've taken away from the education that I had in middle school and high school, and really I don't remember many of the lessons at all. But I remember the people. I remember who they were. I remember if they were interested in what they were talking about. I remember if they weren't interested. I still remember his name to this day. Day one of middle school history. He said, "I don't want to be a history teacher." And that stuck with me, and I will never forget that. So you remember the people more than you remember the topics.
Students pick up on that right away. They can see the truth in people. Yeah. They can see the genuine, the genuine love of education, or lack of love in their topic. Students see right through that. Mm-hmm. It's very transparent, and students, who have a great teacher, they react to it. Mm-hmm. But they can see that idea of the people who don't want to be there. Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. And I think what really helps is the genuine connection that you were talking about. Joe Heffernan with us on Inspiring Teachers here at St. Mary's College at the 2019 Action Research Conference. And one of the things that you mentioned was the honesty piece. I love, this is my first year teaching high school history, so it goes way beyond the 8th grade history of US that I taught before. 8th grade got up to World War I and the standards, and that's the end of your year. And in high school, we were there in November, and I'm like, uh-oh, I have to teach World War II now. I don't have anything. And so it's a dedication to the learning of myself, right? And so I told him something that you said, let's learn together. So we put up an idea parking lot on our back wall. If you want to know something, write it up there. I'll make sure we look at it, and before we finish the unit, we'll have answered all this extra stuff besides what's in the book and besides the resources that I pull in for you. And if you want to know something, well then let me put you in a breakout group and you go research it and you go find it. You can self-guide, you can find out what you're interested in. So I give a lot of choices, I give a lot of options, and I tell them we're learning together. And a lot of times I'll put something in a PowerPoint right before that I didn't know, or I'll put in extra, I call them like hint tickets or extra side notes of history, and just explore a little. It's not what we're doing, but it's a quick thing, like the dogs that were parachuted in for London in World War II. I didn't know about that. So I'm learning something every day and every week and becoming a better teacher. And I told them yesterday, I said, if I'm not trying to improve, what kind of motivation am I setting for you? I'm always trying to get better with you.
So and that transparency helps so much. Starting my first year as a woodshop teacher, I don't know everything. And unfortunately, the person before me, he did know everything. He absolutely knew everything. This guy is amazing. I have big shoes to fill. And so when a kid says, Mr. Beam, how are we going to do this? I say, well, I don't know, but let's go to YouTube. Let's do some research. Let's figure it out, and then we'll do it. And I walk them through that process, so then they don't need me. They have YouTube. They have the resources that they can go out and they can do it themselves.
It takes a tremendous amount of courage to put yourself in that vulnerable position of saying, I don't know the answer. And then the students look at you and say, well, you're the teacher. You're supposed to know, hey, you know what? I'm a student too. We're going to learn this together. Right. And when we do that with students, they start to see it in more of a partnership and willing to go down that road. We're going to learn about this together, whatever the topic is. Ripping a piece of wood, or putting it through the joiner, or doing research on World War II and figuring out a concept that we didn't know, or an obscure event that may have impacted the course of the war. It's this idea that we're going to go down this journey together. I'm not the keeper of the knowledge. I'm here to help you on your journey to discover it, and I'm going to discover something too.
And it's something about moments. You're mentioning that, Tavis mentioned that, the moment where he felt the history teacher wasn't connected. You mentioned the moment of being in woodshop and feeling connected. When I was teaching Vietnam a couple of weeks ago, so another topic I had not taught, we found a tape recording from John F. Kennedy in the Oval Office, and he's talking about something that happened in South Vietnam. And in the middle of his recording, his son walks in, and he says, "Daddy, will you tell me again about the seasons?" And he says, "In the fall, what do we wear?" And he's talking about the 4 seasons, and I told them, this is a moment, right? He's president of the United States, he has a lot going on, and he's dealing with foreign policy, and he's also a dad.
And you don't find that in a textbook.
And you don't find that in a textbook. And then that's something too, when you ask the class, can you imagine what you'd have to do to pause what you were thinking and saying, and spend a few minutes with your son, and then just as quickly as he comes in, he leaves.
And how it speaks about his character to not just blow him off, say, no, I can't talk about
Or
that.
have a locked door, right?
Yeah.
How many kids can walk into the Oval Office at any moment? So those kinds of things where you look at students and you see their eyes and they're like, wow. And those are the moments that you sometimes can't build into a lesson, but when they happen, it's very special.
Those are the moments we look for in education, and we see them every day. And I get to walk into a classroom and see students discover something new that they didn't know before, and it's a very rewarding experience for them.
That's very cool. So if our show's about inspiring teachers, if you're having a teacher come into your office who's a first-year teacher, what's something you would want to tell them about your school, your community, and the way you want them to go about their teaching? What would you say to someone coming in to see that?
It's a tough position to be in. You want to bring new teachers into the profession. You want people who are strong and want to be there. And sometimes you have to be upfront and honest and say, teaching's hard, but it's rewarding. It's the most rewarding thing I've ever done in my life, in my professional life. And I think that once you get past the challenges and you move through it, and even those challenges can be rewarding in themselves. Yeah, it's tough. But you know what? You make it through and you become stronger as a result of it. Mm-hmm. And the impact that you're going to have on students and young men and women who are growing up is going to be powerful for that. That idea of putting yourself out there and saying, I don't have all the answers, but we're going to go down that road together and have those students come along with you is going to make everything better in education. It's going to make this world a better place. As cliche as that sounds, it will make it a better place.
Yeah. This philosophy of, I don't have all the answers, I feel like that's new, right? I feel like there's been a shift in education, because I feel like when I went to high school, middle school, the sentiment was, I have all the answers, you sit there. Where do you think that came from? Why do you think that came out in what we've been doing in the last, I don't know, it's been 20 years since I was in school.
I think that's a product of what something that like this school does here is we look at things through a research lens. We look at what works, we look at what doesn't work. Jean-Baptiste de La Salle put students in rows, right? That's where that idea comes from. We'll put students in rows, we'll have one central teacher teaching to a body of students now. And that worked for a long time. As we started to look through it, we said, you know what? We don't just want to be the keeper of the knowledge and put that out there. We want students to engage, and we want them to put their hands on it. We want them to think about what they're doing. And so we start to think about, we can put people in groups, like you were talking about earlier. We can have a group over here. That's a really good question. Let's explore that together. Why doesn't this group go over here and think about it, and then this group over here has another topic, we can think about that. It doesn't all have to be the same learning going on at the same time. It can be a synthesis of learning that comes together later.
And when you do that, you're stepping into the unknown.
Mm-hmm.
You have to admit that you don't know.
Exactly.
Because you don't, because when it's all the textbook and that's it. Mm-hmm. Well, I do know. The textbook is everything, and I have all the answers.
And we know that the textbook is not everything.
Right.
And it changes. How often are new editions coming out? New concepts are coming out. Why can't we have that engagement and exploration in the classroom that's happening, that's authentic, mm-hmm. that is authentic teaching and learning that's happening in the classroom? Not just teaching and learning from the teacher to the student, but the reciprocal as well from the student to the teacher. Right. That idea is growing. That idea is happening in the classroom right now. We have teachers that are practicing this on a daily basis, that are walking around and engaging with their students at that level and learning just as much as their students are.
Right. And it makes it such a more valuable experience for the teacher.
Joe, are there any, if I was to walk in your office, are there any inspirational quotes or mottos that you have on your desk or your wall, or something that you tell people on a daily basis?
I just say that you can do it. I don't have anything in particular hanging on my wall, I have a St. Mary's banner. So I said, you can go there. That's my inspiration.
Yeah.
That's good. When I worked at the Salvation Army for a couple of years, my boss and I shared an office, and he told every person that walked into his office every single time that if you always do what you always did, you'll always get what you always got.